There's a free trick that keeps every plant in your garden alive through a 100-degree heat wave, using nothing but materials already sitting in your kitchen and your yard. No shade cloth orders, no emergency sprinkler systems, no $80 garden umbrellas from the big box store. A retired school teacher in Phoenix watched her tomatoes, peppers, and roses survive the brutal June 2025 heat dome that killed every plant in her neighbor's professionally landscaped yard. While 255 million Americans were sweating through what meteorologists called dangerous, life-threatening conditions, her garden kept producing fruit, kept blooming flowers, kept its leaves green and turgid. She spent $0. Her neighbor spent $340 on emergency garden products from the local nursery, plus another $180 trying to replace the dead plants in July. Her neighbor's garden never recovered. Hers did better than the year before. The summer of 2025 brought the longest, most intense heat dome the modern United States has ever recorded. Triple-digit temperatures stretched across more than half the country for over 2 weeks. The Department of Agriculture announced over $90 million in emergency grants for climate-smart greenhouses, while researchers at the University of Georgia confirmed 2024 as the warmest year since record-keeping began in 1880. The Royal Horticultural Society in England documented over 80% of surveyed gardens reporting heat damage during the 2022 European heat wave. Hydrangeas, Japanese maples, fuchsias, and even hardy roses listed as the top 10 most heat-damaged plants across British gardens. The global commercial greenhouse market is now worth over $46 billion in 2025 and projected to reach $130 billion by 2035, almost entirely because climate change is pushing food production into protected environments that home gardeners cannot afford to build. The garden products industry has responded to this crisis with shelves full of expensive solutions: anti-stress sprays at $25 a bottle, reflective mulch sheets at $35 a roll, commercial shade cloth at $80 to $150 for a small yard, smart irrigation controllers at $300, misting systems at $500 installed, emergency plant rescue kits marketed at panicking homeowners for $40 a box. The price tag on every one of these products is built around one assumption. The assumption is that protecting your plants from extreme heat requires money, equipment, and expertise. Every commercial reinforces this belief. Every glossy bottle on every garden center shelf reinforces it. The message is consistent and relentless. Trust the chemists. Buy the gear. Pay the price. Or watch your garden die. But 3,500 years before the first plastic shade cloth was ever extruded in a factory, gardeners in the most punishing climates on Earth had already solved this problem completely, using nothing but what they had on hand. They knew how to cool soil, they knew how to slow water loss from leaves, they knew how to keep tender vegetables alive in temperatures that should have killed them within hours. They wrote the answers down. They painted them on tomb walls. They carved them into clay tablets. And then one generation of homeowners stopped listening because a garden center commercial told them survival required a credit card. This is the story of the simplest, oldest, and most effective heat protection method in horticultural history, the civilizations that perfected it across 3 continents, and the modern industry that prays you never figure out how to do it for free. Welcome to Forbidden Gardening. If these stories matter to you, the subscribe button and the bell are how this knowledge survives another generation. Here we dig up what the garden industry quietly buried. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. Around 1500 BCE, an Egyptian noble named Senufer commissioned the most detailed garden in surviving ancient Egyptian art. The plan of his estate, painted on the walls of his Theban tomb, shows date palms, sycamore figs, and grapevines arranged with mathematical precision around rectangular reflection pools. But the trees were not chosen for their beauty alone. They were planted to cast precise, overlapping patterns of shade across the vegetable beds and herb plots that fed Senufer's household. Egyptian gardeners working in temperatures that regularly exceeded 110 degrees Fahrenheit had figured out something the modern industry has spent millions trying to obscure. The most powerful cooling tool in any garden is a plant that throws shade onto another plant, exactly when the sun is hottest, exactly where the heat does the most damage. Persian gardeners refined this technique into an art form. The classic Persian garden, sunken below ground level and surrounded by tall walls, was specifically engineered to trap cool morning air, deflect afternoon sun off white plastered surfaces, and channel rising heat upward and away from the planted beds. The technique spread along the Silk Road for the next 2,000 years. Roman estates used trellis grapevines to shade leafy vegetables. Moorish gardeners in Andalusia built courtyard fountains that humidified the air around fruit trees. Aztec farmers built floating chinampa gardens in shallow lake water that kept root systems cool while corn and tomatoes baked in the sun above. Every civilization that ever faced extreme summer heat with limited water arrived at the same elegant solution by independent invention. Cool the soil, slow the wind, break the direct sun, keep the leaves wet enough to sweat and dry enough not to rot. Before I go any further, I need to stop and tell you something important. This video is just the first layer of what the garden industry has spent decades burying. I spent months compiling every forgotten gardening technique, every suppressed home remedy, every cheap, natural method into one complete archive. All of it is inside the complete Forbidden Gardening Vault. The exact heat protection protocol with timing charts for different climate zones, the hydrangea color trick, the banana peel rose food formula, the Epsom salt schedule, the vinegar and salt weed killer recipe, the aspirin and milk tomato formula, the lawn tonic recipe your grandfather mixed in his garage, the Persian olive irrigation pots that cut water bills by 70%. Over 12 complete garden guides in one vault. Every page built for immediate use this weekend. The link is in the description. But stay here, because the science behind heat survival makes every product on the shelf look completely unnecessary. Here's what actually happens to a plant during a heat wave. Plant leaves contain microscopic pores called stomata, which open during the day to take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Water vapor escapes through these same pores through a process called transpiration. On a normal summer day, transpiration cools the leaf surface the same way sweating cools human skin. But when air temperatures exceed roughly 95 degrees Fahrenheit and direct sunlight pushes leaf surface temperatures above 105 degrees, the plant faces an impossible choice. Keep the stomata open and dehydrate to death within hours, or close the stomata to conserve water and overheat from inside, because transpiration is the only cooling system the plant has. Above 113 degrees Fahrenheit, the fatty membranes inside young leaf tissues physically begin to melt. Mature leaves contain specialized heat shock proteins that stabilize cell structures during temporary heat stress. Young leaves, new growth, and developing fruits do not have these proteins yet. This is why heat damage almost always shows up first on the newest leaves and the youngest tomatoes. This is why every commercial nursery loses thousands of dollars in young plants every summer despite their irrigation systems. The water alone cannot save the plant. The plant needs three things working at the same time. Soil temperature must stay below 85 degrees at root level. Leaf surface temperature must stay below 100 degrees. And humidity around the plant must stay above 40% so the stomata can keep working. If you have made it this far, you already understand more about plant physiology than most homeowners spending hundreds of dollars on emergency garden gear. Subscribe and share this with someone watching their tomatoes wilt right now. Now stay with me, because the money trail behind this is the real story. You cannot patent shade. You cannot trademark a damp newspaper. You cannot build a billion-dollar industry on the truth that every vegetable garden on Earth survived for 10,000 years without a single shade cloth, mister, or smart controller. The economic engine of the climate adaptation gardening market depends on one psychological lever. The homeowner must believe that climate change has created a problem so unprecedented that only modern engineered products can solve it. A free Egyptian technique that keeps tomatoes alive at 110 degrees is a wrecking ball through that entire shelf. I need to be honest with you about the real limits of free heat protection. Nothing keeps a plant alive at 120 degrees in full direct sun for 3 full days. Some plants, especially shallow-rooted annuals planted in poor soil, will struggle no matter what you do. And free shade methods require attention. You have to put them up before the heat hits, not after. You have to take them down at night so the plants can breathe. This is not a set and forget system. It is a daily morning and evening rhythm, the same rhythm your great-grandparents knew before they had a thermostat. Here's exactly how to do it in your own garden. Every morning during a heat wave, before the sun clears the horizon, lay damp newspapers, old bed sheets, or burlap sacks loosely across the most vulnerable plants. Anchor the corners with rocks. The damp material reflects sunlight, evaporates slowly to humidify the air directly around the leaves, and drops the canopy temperature by 15 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Remove the covers in the evening as the sun drops. Apply a thick layer of dry mulch, 6 to 8 inches of straw, dry grass clippings, shredded leaves, or even cardboard around the base of every plant. This single layer keeps soil temperatures up to 30 degrees cooler than bare ground. Water deeply at sunrise, never midday, never on the leaves. Soak the soil at the root zone for 20 minutes per plant once every 3 days during a heat wave, never daily, because shallow daily watering trains roots to grow shallow and die first. For tall plants, drive bamboo poles or wooden stakes into the ground 3 feet tall on the south and west sides of vulnerable beds, and stretch old bed sheets across them like a temporary canopy. Position the canopy 2 feet above the plants. The angle blocks the harshest afternoon sun while letting morning light through. Spray foliage lightly with cool water at sunset to drop leaf temperature, and let the plant recover overnight. Add 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt to each gallon of evening water once a week, because the magnesium supports chlorophyll repair under heat stress. Total cost across an entire summer of heat waves, $0. Compare that to the $200 to $500 the industry wants you to spend on shade gear, anti-stress sprays, and replacement plants. A homesteader in Arizona documented her vegetable garden online across 3 brutal summers using only damp sheets, dry straw mulch, and morning watering. Her tomato yields tripled. Her pepper harvest held steady through 115-degree afternoons. Her total annual heat protection budget ran under $5 for replacement bed sheets from a thrift store. This knowledge did not die because it stopped working. It died because it worked too well, with materials too cheap, in a way that completely eliminated the products industry's most profitable summer category. Senefer painted shade gardens onto tomb walls 3,500 years ago. Persian engineers cooled vegetables with sunken courtyards 2,000 years ago. Aztec farmers grew tomatoes in floating gardens 500 years ago. Roman estates trellised grapevines over lettuce beds for the entire span of the empire. And then one generation of homeowners stopped listening because a glossy commercial told them only the engineers at the garden center could save their plants from a hot day. The bed sheets are still in the linen closet. The straw is still on the lawn. The newspapers are still in the recycling bin. The chemistry of evaporative cooling has not changed in 3,500 years. The only thing that changed is who convinced you that survival required a credit card. If this vault opened something for you today, subscribe and share this video. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside is going to make every fruit tree nursery in your county suddenly very nervous about their summer pruning service.